that's it. Let me share one other thing that's kind of currently out there for those that want a little kind of heavier scholarship, and this is a little bit heavier, but let me just tell you a resource that's out there. What's happened here is that if you think about the whole process of the translation of the Book of Mormon, think about the multi-stages steps that it went through. The Book of Mormon was a revelation to Joseph Smith. He wasn't translating. He wasn't a linguist. It was a revelation to him. Oftentimes the plates just sat on the table with the blanket over them. So it's all being received to him. So he's going to receive a revelation word by word. He's going to go very slowly. In we think about 90 days, a little bit more, a little less. Oliver Cowdery is writing, we think about 8 hours a day. They were doing about 8 pages a day, and they managed in about 3 months to get the entire Book of Mormon completed. But that means very tedious process of Joseph reading very slowly, Oliver is writing longhand, and then after they complete the process, now they learn from the 116 pages, if somebody steals the manuscript, we're toast. So what we're going to do when we get ready to take it to the printer, he had Oliver made a complete copy of the manuscript. So we have the original manuscript under the hand of Revelation. Then we have the printer's manuscript, which is Oliver Cowdery transferring what was in the original to there. And then we have the printer who is typesetting in there from the printer's manuscript and putting it to actual print so they can actually print it, right? In each step along the way, you have a possibility of some errors creeping in. Even with proofreading and going through. I know that in my books that I've written, we'll go through and proofread it and we still miss stuff. Well, they were doing that, and then we have the tedium of just copying longhand. So one of the things that has come up, a professor at BYU, Royal Skousen, took upon himself a specific project to actually be able to print up the entire original manuscript that we have available to us. We don't have all of it. And then match that against the 1830 copy of the Book of Mormon to see whatever errors or differences there were between the original manuscript and the printing of the Book of Mormon. Does that make sense? And it's taken him like 7 or 8 years to complete this entire project, and he just finished it. And so he's starting to talk a little bit about some of the things that they found. And for the most part, it's amazing how few errors there were. Most of the errors are punctuation or commas or things that run on sentences that may have changed some of the meaning a little bit. But there were very few errors, if you will. But I want to point out just one error. And it's not a major error, but to me it adds some real meaning to a verse. Okay? Are we on board with, have I confused you so far? Okay. Let me just show one of them. And the reason why I wanted to do it now is that it's just in the chapters that we have been rolling through so far.
November 23rd, 2015, Institute
First
class.
read by 12. And the large and spacious building which my father saw is the vain imaginations and pride of the children of men. And a great and terrible gulf divideth them, yea, even the word of the justice of eternal God. And so you get a sense that somehow God is separating out with this gulf the wicked from what? The tree of life, right? Think of the dreams. Okay? Now, the original manuscript as received from Joseph Smith added one little piece to this, and to me it jumped out and added a lot of meaning to this. This is what it originally said. And the large and spacious building which thy father saw is vain imaginations and the pride of the children of men. And a great and terrible gulf divideth them, yea, even the sword of the justice of the eternal God. Oliver missed an S. in the transferring. So instead of it being word, it's actually sword. Now, can you picture a sword in conjunction with the tree of life? There's always a sword, and what does the sword do? It protects the tree of life from those that aren't worthy yet to be partaking of the tree of life. That's the purpose of the sword.
Well, Kevin, I think it protects the people.
Yes, from doing it and living forever in their sins, right? So the idea of this sword is to protect those that aren't worthy from protecting the tree of life until they're worthy. Because you get this sense, everything else suggests that maybe there's a time that the tree of life, we're supposed to grow the tree of life within us, and we're supposed to partake of the fruit. It isn't like the Lord is saying, we never want you to partake of the fruit of the tree of life. We just need you to be worthy when you do it. And to make sure that you don't, there is an angel that will stand between you and receiving those things. Does that make sense?
I think at Education Week, Ross Barron said that the angels are the bishop, the stake president, and the temple recommend death side.
Yeah, in fact, we were at the temple, and we knew the brother that was checking our recommend on Saturday. And as I stand there, I said, "So you're the angel guarding this thing?" And he looks at me like, "What?" And I just had to quickly explain, yeah, there are angels guarding the tree of life, and you're one of them, because we have to get our recommend past you. Oh, okay, he liked that.
How about
cool.
the calling an election made sure? Would those people be able to take the tree of life?
That's a good question. See, part of the thing with the tree of life, as with all of this, is that it's symbolic, and we don't know exactly what all of that means. But you get this sense that ultimately, when we are prepared, the angels who stand as sentinels let us past, and we're able to partake of everything that the Father has. Now, whether there's a physical aspect to that, we don't know. There was actually fruit in Eden, right? It says it's symbolic. It makes sense to me because of the way we partake of the sacrament that there might have been fruit. That he likes having a physical manifestation, but we don't know for sure. Okay. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting. If you're interested in more about the Royal Skousen manuscript project, you might just look online because there's a lot out there, and it isn't any major doctrinal changes. But sometimes there's little pieces that come along that add a real richness that came simply by error. And by the way, we have at least two people. We're going to talk about one of them today. Two of the authors, if you will, of the Book of Mormon told us there were errors. If there are weaknesses and errors in this, they are the errors of men. I don't know how many authors are out there saying, well, I might have made a mistake when you're running across there. But that's why it shouldn't be any shock to somebody going, well, we think there was an error at this juncture, or they used this word and they should have used this word or something. Nephi said there was going to be that, and Moroni said there were going to be this. Okay, let's not be really shocked if sometimes there are errors of weaknesses of men that ended up in a piece of this. Does that make sense? Okay. Should we move forward? Okay. All right. I thought I would start off with a quote from Elder C.S. Lewis. Yes, one of the brethren. Gets quoted more than anybody else. So let me ask you this. Here's what he said. I read to know that I'm not alone. Speaking specifically of the Bible. Put that in different words. How would you respond to that? I read to know that I'm not alone.
The Spirit speaks to us.
Yes. And the Spirit speaks to us and tells us what?
Truth.
Yeah.
That there is a God.
Yes. And He loves me. And because of that, I'm not alone. Think about our struggles that we go through in our life, and in those moments we tend to really feel pretty isolated. So I thought it was fascinating that C.S. Lewis, for him, as he's looking at it, says, I read the Bible and this to know that I'm not alone. There's a reassurance that He's there. There's a reassurance that I'm watched over.
Support your faith.
Yeah, and then that builds my faith. Because instinctively, do you know the most destructive thing you can do to a child? Is a physical punishment. It's isolation. The most destructive thing that happens to a child is when they are ignored. They can handle physical beatings better than they handle isolation. That is the most destructive thing that occurs.
So timeout really works.
Yeah, timeout. Yeah, there's something to that. Okay. So with that as a backdrop, I want to let's hop into 1 Nephi 17, and we're going to hop in kind of mid-discussion here and carry over what we've been talking about. So let's go to 1 Nephi 17.
Kevin,
Yeah.
don't you think that's the most destructive thing you can do to anybody? An
Is
adult?
I ignore them and absolutely, because I just think we have this need for other people. We have this need to know that we're not alone.
That's why so many people don't come to church, because they don't feel recognized, or they feel invisible. That's what one lady in Relief Society told me.
Isn't it fascinating that sometimes the most isolated and alone you can feel is in a crowd? It's like you're surrounded by people and you're craving and wanting that connection, but you're still feeling alone. That's why it amplifies that need. We are social creatures. People that isolate themselves from other people turn into like Unabombers and things. They just don't do well alone. Okay? So, okay. So we're going to pick this up, and here's Nephi, and they are traveling. We were talking about this a little bit last time. They're traveling through the wilderness for the space of 8 years in the wilderness, and they come to Bountiful. And now they're going to get go to. I'm not going to do this really in order because there are several lessons that come out of this whole process. But let's start with this one. Remember, the brethren are going to the brothers are going to start pushing back. Here we are in Bountiful. We're now enjoying Bountiful. And he says, no, we need to build a ship. No, we don't really want to build a ship. And if you looked out, the water is kind of intimidating. And you work with metal. We don't think you'd be great at building a boat. And so they start to push back. And so we walk in right in the middle of Nephi's lecture to the brothers that we've studied many times. And he's going to say... for instance, do you suppose that the children of this land, who were in the land of promise, who were driven out by our fathers being the children of Israel when they came out of Egypt, do you think they were more righteous? The people that they had to drive out, do you think they were more righteous? No, they weren't able to come in. Do you think our fathers would have been more choice if they'd been righteous? No. The Lord esteems all flesh. And then he says, and he loveth those who will have him to be their God. He loveth our fathers, and he covenanted with them, even Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He remembered the covenants which he had made. Therefore he did bring them out of Egypt. Now, he's going to then reference a specific instance. And it's funny how this instance keeps showing up over and over in the Book of Mormon. For the Book of Mormon prophets, this was one of those watershed moments, what they always kind of refer back to. And he did straighten them, the children of Israel, in the wilderness with his rod. For they hardened their hearts, even as ye have, and the Lord straightened them because of their iniquity. How's he going to do this? How's he going to wake them up?
A few things.
Yeah.
Number one, he took away the blessings of the Melchizedek priesthood.
Sure. Now they're going to struggle without the priesthood. But listen, he says there was a specific way that I'm going to kind of sort out a little bit. Those that were righteous from those that weren't. He sent fiery, I always have a hard time with this, fiery flying serpents among them. And after they had bitten, so picture, they're all being bit by these snakes, right? They're all carrying the poison in their system. We talked about this about a year and a half ago. Flying serpents among them, and after they were bitten, he prepared a way that they might be healed, and the labor which they had to perform, the laborious, hard work it would take to become healed from this poison in their system was what? Look.
Look up.
Look. All you got to do is look. Well, that should be simple, right? Just look. And because of the simpleness of the way, or the easiness of the way, there were many that perished. Now, let me stop for a second. Why? Because so often when people aren't coming to church, or they're struggling with their callings or their families or whatever, it's because it is so hard. How many times do people say to you, I'm really struggling because it's too easy? I'm just really struggling. I don't know exactly what to do. The Lord has made it too easy for me. What's he talking about? Why is it that people would struggle to do something because it was going to be easy? Like following an iron rod. Just follow the rod. Well, that would be easy. Why would it be harder? Because why would things be too easy? What's the challenge there? Why? Yeah.
Because they didn't have enough faith.
If I don't have faith, then what?
Then you're not going to follow.
You're not going to follow. But wouldn't you think, if I don't have enough faith, then you're going to give me something hard to do. Then I can't do it because it's too hard. Isn't it interesting? Because it is a lack of faith, where lack of faith says, I'm not going to do it because it's too easy. It's too simple.
Well, if something is easy to do, it's also easy not to do.
I've been looking at a thing with snakes on it. Heal you.
Yeah, well, and that is the easy thing. By the way, all you're going to have to do, go look at the snake pole. We made a snake pole. Go look at it, you'll be saved.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Naaman's another example.
Naaman is a good example. Just go wash in the river. Really? This is leprosy. Tell me something to do hard. No, it's easy.
Do it 6 times.
Yeah.
So they're looking beyond the mark.
Part of the simplicity is that sometimes I want something more complex. I want something harder. Yeah.
So, for me, this is a clear example of pruning, and it's the servant holding up the thing that is actually pruning the people.
Yes. We were talking earlier that part of our job will be, reference that.
Jacob 6:2.
Jacob 6:2. Read that. Read the bottom part of that for a second. Listen
It says,
closely.
"In the day that he shall set his hand again the second time to recover his people is the day, yea, even the last time that the servants of the Lord shall go forth in his power to nourish and prune his vineyard, and after that the end soon cometh."
Okay, so it will be the job of the servants in the last day to nourish and to prune. Well, prune, that means like cutting things out. That means like drawing some lines with this sword thing. And one of the things that will trip people up is the simplicity, the easiness of it.
Is it Alma who goes back and comes back to this and says that they did not look because they believed that it would not heal them? As simple as that. They just didn't believe that it was going to work. And so with that, yeah, there you go. And that really struck me. I mean, how many times have I read it over the last 25 years? But there was 4 or 5 years ago, I remember reading that going, well, that's me. I mean, how often do I dismiss something where I really shouldn't, or that I need to take it more seriously, or
Yeah.
to believe that it would heal me or would make a difference?
sometimes our sacrament meetings are kind of boring. Sometimes it's kind of simple. In fact, you know what? General Conference, they kind of say the same things over and over and over, don't they?
If you have that mindset.
Well, yeah, it's just the same, but it's the same stuff. They're going to talk about faith and keeping the commandments. At the end of it, every General Conference, the final answer to that is keep the commandments. There's nothing more than that. Don't we want something more complex? Don't we want something more exciting? Don't we want...
Let's stop talking about food stories now.
Yeah, we're not doing food story stuff. They're not doing it anyway, so why talk about it? Okay, yeah.
I think if you asked me to do something really easy for a really huge reward, that's really suspicious.
It's kind of suspicious. Yes, it very well can be. You mean I just have to keep the commandments and that, all you got to do is get up and go to seminary every morning. Well, that's kind of hard, but that's kind of easy. We want more complex. And by the way, who is in society today, who wants it to be more and more difficult and complex? Who struggles with this the most?
The government.
Well, yeah, the government can't ever quite figure this part out yet. How big's the tax code?
Looking at some of the cross references I have in Human 8:15, it says, and as many as should look upon the servant should live, even so as many as should look upon the Son of God with faith, having a contrite spirit might live, even into that life which is eternal.
So it's about contriteness. Okay, now, let me take a step back then. Why are we having this discussion in the middle of Nephi trying to convince the guys about the boat? Why is he going down this particular road?
Well, they were in the land bountiful. They had finally found a really nice place to live, despite all of that desert they had come from.
Sure. So they're kicking back. So he's going to come back. So my explanation to you why you should help with the boat is, remember Moses. Remember, these are Deuteronomist, right? It's all about Moses and the law. Remember Moses, and remember the people who died because it was too easy. What's he telling them they have to do? What's that?
Not stay there where it's easy.
No, we're not going to stay here. But all we've got to do, guys, is what? Build a boat.
Which probably isn't easy.
I wouldn't think it would be easy. So if we're talking about something as complex as building a boat, why would that be easy?
Because the complex part of it, which is the designs and stuff, that's all going to be done by God. And all we have to do is listen to God and do His will.
Bingo. We can't build the boat. Yes, you can build the boat. All we have to do is do what God told us to do. By the way, how did we get from Jerusalem to Bountiful in the first place? All we were doing was following the Liahona. We were living Liahona lives, as we were talking about last time, which is just go there. Really? I want more than that. No, just don't make it more complicated. It's just there. I'm not sure we can do that. Then live by every word that comes from His mouth. Just do it. Break it specifically. Don't make it more complicated. Just follow.
But I think he was having to fight against the natural human tendency that it doesn't matter what you're in or where you're living, you're always afraid to do something new. It doesn't even matter if you're in a terrible, terrible situation. It's more scary to actually go into a new situation that might even potentially be better.
And you're going to have to go into a brand new situation. How are we going to do the new situation? You just have to do what God tells you to do.
Which they're not good at hearing.
No, they're not. Now, in society, so often, the people that are going to struggle with this are the learned and the not humble and contrite. I got to know why. I want to learn. It needs to be more. I'm going to study. I'm now educated. I'm now knowledgeable. I know all these things. I'm very, very smart. I'm amazed at how smart I am. So look at the degrees I have on the wall. I'm so dang smart. Keep the commandments. Oh, there's got to be more than that. The brethren said, do this. Well, I'm going to do it my way. That's too simple. We're going to sit in gospel doctrine and hear the same thing again. I want it to be more. I want more mysteries. I want more complexity. I want...
Trim your lambs.
Yeah, I don't want to trim my lamps. I want to do it my way. To be learned is helpful if you are wise. And wise means studying wisdom and trusting that God is smarter than you are. Until I become skeptical. The problem that we have struggling with so many in the church at the moment is that there is an underlying current that is really pushing back that says, just because the brethren said it doesn't make it so. And because it's not doctrine, it's policy. And if it's policy, then the brethren aren't really, they're old. And just because they said this doesn't mean it won't change tomorrow. So why push too hard on that? In fact, we're going to probably be smarter because the brethren really need to change the policy. They're not being very politically correct. And they're old and they'll change, so we're smarter. We're more educated. We're more sophisticated. We're more... And the minute that what they've done is broken the link between saying, I no longer believe that the brethren are listening to God. Now it's just the brethren are a big organization making executive bureaucratic decisions, and based on that, they're gonna mess it up. Well, what about the fact that they're prophets? Well, this is policy, and they're not really listening to God on this one. And I'll cite you cases where I think they weren't. And when that link is broken, now they're drifting. Now following the gospel and following the brethren is no longer simple. It's more complicated. And I'm going to trust the people online in their blogs more than I'm going to trust the brethren in conference. Because when I no longer believe the brethren in conference, then a guy with a blog is smarter than a prophet. You break that link and now you're drifting. Now it says, well, all you got to do is look and live. Well, in my research and my understanding and my knowledge, that's kind of simplistic. Let me give you one other example of that. We were talking earlier about, because I don't think I'm getting into it here, we're talking about the great and abominable church, okay, in the Book of Mormon, right? By the way, where does the great and abominable church live? If you look at the dreams of Lehi and Nephi. They have a place they gather. Where does the great and abominable church live? In the great and spacious building. They're up there. Okay, they're there. They have this great place, and they have great clothes, and they heap down all kinds of scorn on everybody else. Right?
They live at the window.
Yes, they kind of live at the window so they can point their fingers. That's where they live. And one of the things that we know about the great and abominable from the great and spacious is that they're going to pull out all the plain and precious truths out of the scriptures, right? Well, one way to pull all of the plain and precious truths out of the scriptures is that you erase it. If you're going to leave stuff out of the Bible, we believe that a lot was taken out. Certainly the Deuteronomists did that. But sometimes you can eliminate the plain and precious truths in the gospel simply by causing people not to believe what's written. You don't have to physically remove it. You just have to get them to not believe it. It's there, but just pass over it. Let me give you an example. The current trend in New Testament scholars is that they're focused on what they call the historical Jesus. It's the Jesus with all the silly miracles taken out. It's the Jesus that's kind of like Buddha. It's the Jesus that really said good stuff. And we can throw out the miracles, and we can throw out the miraculous stuff, and the Son of God stuff, and the resurrection stuff, and all of that stuff. We want to be able to believe that there was a historical Jesus, and he was a good guy who taught people to love each other and be tolerant of everybody. We want that historical Jesus.
Do they take out his mouthiness?
Yeah. No, actually they don't. They like his mouthiness. Because he's going to call people on the rich organization stuff and that they're not being nice to the poor. They like the historical Jesus without the miracles.
So really the great and spacious building and the abominable church could live within each of us if we choose to follow that. And it's not a place, it's a inside.
You got it. Does that make sense? That so often you're going to find that the great and abominable church is less about a place and it's a lot less about an organization and it's more about an attitude. It is about an attitude that fights against the saints of God. And one of the ways that we know this, go back to the historical Jesus thing. Someone looking for the historical Jesus could be reading the New Testament right as it sits, and what they're going to read along, and what happens when they come to a miracle? I just eliminated it. I didn't tear it out. It's still there, but my eyes went, oh, miracle, that's stupid, move on. I'm going to read along. Here comes the stuff about resurrection. Oh, that's silly. I'm going to look for all of the love everybody, be tolerant to everybody, because nobody does anything wrong and they all have their own path, and no matter which church or organization you belong to, you're fine as long as you're really nice to people. I'm going to leave all that stuff out. The plain and precious truths have been removed mentally and emotionally in our goal to find what we want. Does that make sense? Suddenly, it's not simple anymore. We just said, read the Bible, read the Book of Mormon, do what it says. No, I don't want to do that. I want to do it my way. And suddenly, it's not simple no more. Does that make sense? So, why are we having this discussion with Laman and Lemuel prior to building the boat?
Because they want to do it their way.
They got that attitude.
It doesn't really mean that.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that. We're not supposed to really follow God. We're supposed, Nephi, we think you made up the Liahona. We think you made it. You got lucky. You followed the frankincense trail.
Could use 2 bent sticks.
And by hook or by accident almost, we landed in Bountiful. Let's not chance things anymore. Let's just hang here. Let's not push it. We got lucky. Okay? So
just before you go on, I think one of the key things that you stated over and over again was my way, this is what I want, and it's very focused on our will versus God's will.
And those that are going to follow the simple way says, I'm going to follow God's will, not our own will, which is really hard. In fact, he's going to go on and say that. Verse 45, Laman and Lemuel, and us, and those that have that spirit of the great and abominable at moments in our life, ye are swift to do iniquity, but slow to remember the Lord your God. And then he says, by the way, you have seen an angel. And he spake unto you, and you heard his voice from time to time. And he hath spoken unto you, and then listen closely, because there's a very important key here for any of us wanting to know where we are in our journey. You have heard his voice from time to time. He has spoken to you in a still, small voice. But ye were past feeling, and when we're past feeling, a very interesting thing happens to the voice that we're hearing. And it gives you some idea about how the Spirit works. You were past feeling that you could not feel his words. How do we hear the still small voice? With our ears? No, with our heart. We hear it in our heart, and you feel the words. Isn't it interesting that in our... Like I was going to... In our society today, as we make things more complex, Neil Maxwell is going to suggest, some young people belong to peer groups in which there is an almost constant celebration of the senses, tactile, visual, and oral. It is significant that these three prophets, Nephi, Paul, and Mormon, in three different cultures and at three different times, each used the two words to describe people who had celebrated the senses so much that they had lost their capacity to feel. Isn't that amazing?
Well, if you think about it, what are you told today? You should do whatever makes you happy.
Yeah, man, go for happiness. And happiness is about all this excitement. And, yeah. The words past feeling appear in the scriptures to depict people who had become sufficiently encrusted. Pure Neil Maxwell. Become sufficiently encrusted in their excesses in which they killed the capacity to feel. The very capacity to feel in which they celebrated was lost in the process of celebration. It was interesting in our recent travels, whether we're in the airport or anywhere else, it is the ubiquitous. I always have earphones in my head, so I've always got like a music or something. There's a sound that's hitting me, and I can be in the midst of a group of people, but I'm listening to my own little world. It's like I can't be quiet long enough. I have to fill that space with noise coming from somewhere else.
That can also happen when you don't like who you are, and you're kind of self-destructive mentally or emotionally to yourself. You can get to that past feeling that way, where you don't feel anything.
Don't let anything in. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Sometimes that noise is coming from our own head. Mm-hmm. Good point.
Well, we also use that noise to distract us.
From what?
From whatever we're trying to run from emotionally. There's so much, emotional turmoil today that we use the headphones in our ears to distract us from that emotion, those emotions.
I don't want to feel. I am past feeling, and I'm going to do everything possible to make sure that I don't feel. Yeah.
We saw a great video yesterday in gospel doctor in class just about this. About a girl had her headphones in, and the overlay, the voice overlay, was the Joseph Smith history about there being such an excitement and an uproar, and anyways, it goes on for a little while, and then it says, where he gets to the script, to James 1:5, that she needs to ask, and so she finally, in the end, takes the earphones out and spends some time
And listens.
and things like that. It was great.
Let me take the James 1:5 thing for a second, because I think that's a perfect example of these two combined. For Joseph Smith, it was simply a matter of, if you want to know where you can go to have your sins remitted, do what? Ask. Well, just ask God. Really? I can ask God and get an answer. Well, how simple is that? If I want to know something, just ask and I'll find out. And what he was hearing, part of the problem was he was being bombarded by so many other voices that it got mixed in there. But he was able to just go and ask. Yeah.
I'm thinking about my wheels are turning with my own struggle. I use TV as a coping mechanism, and the internet and all sorts of things. Browsing. I want to feel, but it's safe to want
To distract.
something. It's safe to have feelings about something I'm being entertained by. It's not. I'm separating myself from my life. So it's not that I don't want to feel. It's that I want the feelings to be safe. If I feel scared or excited or whatever, it's about these fictitious.
Sure. So sometimes we choose between feeling things and being entertained, and we'll use the entertainment so we don't have to feel. Or we use it as a distraction.
The feelings that are invoked with entertainment and other things are safe because they aren't dealing with real stuff.
They're not hitting me, the
They're
stuff
not
I
real.
want to hear. They were in a situation Elder Maxwell says, in which increasingly stronger stimulants were needed to feel anything. And finally, no dose was large enough to appease their appetites.
Don't you think he's talking both spiritually and physically? I mean, you can get into either arena.
Yes, yeah.
Existentialism, I mean, philosophies or...
In other words, rather than the very simple trust, ask, believe, obey, now we're going to get caught into all of these other things. Unfortunately, this last part is really true. And finally, no dose was large enough to appease their appetites. Having stood in the Roman Colosseum, we talked. They had pictures and everything of people that just come and spend all day at the Colosseum. And at first, it's all right to see animals devouring people, and then there needs to be more of that, and then there needs to be more of that, and as years went on in the Circus Maximus, it just had to be increasingly more bloody and graphic, and they become so satiated to the point that they, and again, it's all this goal to not feel. You want to just be entertained. Yeah.
Classic reason why the Lord decided to restore the church through a young man who was not all messed up with all this.
It wouldn't have been simple for anybody else. If he'd have called Sidney Rigdon instead of Joseph Smith, the Lord would have had to get past all of Sidney Rigdon's noise, all of his ego, all of that. The Lord always calls young to do things like this. Great point. Okay.
Well, don't you see that with heroin or pornography?
Sure. I'm going to pick on the young. I'm going to dull them before they ever get old enough. Yeah.
Well, but not just that, the fact that you need more and more of it just to be normal.
Anything addictive like this that's outside, we develop a tolerance to it. Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah, I know. It's from a book called A Time to Choose. Thank you. All right. Well, that's it. All right. So let's now. He's going to finally get around to building a ship, and I want to do it in this manner. But first of all, let me just answer something. We had a question brought up last week, and I just want to. Here's one of these reasons. Someone asked last week, why is it that the Lord kind of brought Laman and Lemuel along? How come he didn't just send them back to Jerusalem? They're a pain in the neck. Why don't you just go back to Jerusalem? How come he'd go out of his way to zap them and wake them up and convince them and bring them forward? And part of it, we believe they were still observant Jews. That means they have to respect, to a certain extent, the patriarch in the family. So some of that is there.
There has to be opposition in all things, and this was helping Nephi grow.
They needed this opposition. Now comes a very practical reason why they were needed. Why practically were the Laman and Lemuel needed? They needed the manpower. Yeah. He's going to build a ship. He's going to be shown how to do it. But they need people to build the ship.
It's just that I think that Laman and Lemuel didn't want to do what he wanted because they had their mind made out.
No, we're going to do our own thing, aren't we? Okay, so let me break this down as we take a look at how we're going to build the ship. So now we got the manpower, and then he's going to talk them into it, and then they're not going to be sure, and then he's going to zap them, and then they're going to try and worship him because those on the other side, when they struggle, they're going to worship the person, not the power, and we could take a long time on that whole topic. But finally, it's like they're on board. So now we're going to build the boat. We're on board with the idea that we're going to move forward here. Now, I want you to see some of the common elements here, because in the makeup of the Book of Mormon, we get two journeys, do we not? In detail, of people that had to be gotten to the promised land in one piece. So I want to parallel those because I think there are important lessons to be taught here. First of all, we're going to get, and we were talking about it earlier, how did they know how to build the boat?
Revelation.
Yeah, by revelation. I did not build the ship after the manner of men, Nephi said. So it didn't matter. I mean, what what if the Laman and Lemuel are going, come on, when was the last time you went to a shipbuilding conference? I didn't see you studying shipbuilding at university. And Nephi's response would be, we're not building it according to the ways of man. This is not a man-built boat. This is going to be a God-designed boat. It's going to have... remember we talked about the building of the Kirtland Temple, and we're going to reference that in just a second. Was the Kirtland Temple man's design? No, it was God's design. And in fact, we get that moment that we've talked about where Joseph takes Frederick G. Williams and Sidney Rigdon out into the woods, and they lay down, and he puts his arms out, and they each lay on each side. And the vision of the Kirtland Temple comes almost like a CG three-dimensional vision of the Kirtland Temple, and it's going to come, and they see it in the distance, and it comes forward, and it passes over the top of them, and they're like, okay, yeah, we can see the pulpits and the three level. Wow, and you do this, and okay. And they saw it clearly because it wasn't God's design. It wasn't man's design. It was God's. That's pretty cool. And at times we got records of people saying to Frederick G. Williams, "Do we do it this way?" And he says, "No, that's not the way I saw it in the vision. It has to be done this way." Well, that's kind of weird, I know. We did that a little bit with the Nauvoo Temple. The Nauvoo Temple, they kept saying, well, structurally, they shouldn't be the rounded windows like this. They should be square. And Joseph said, no, I've seen it in vision. They are to be rounded, and if you'll do it this way, it'll work. It was God's pattern, not man's. Okay? There is going to be a parallel with temples here in a second. Hold on for this one. Okay? Lord's design for Nephi. Now, how about for the Jaredites? How did they design their barges?
Like a walnut.
Jared did go to work and build barges according to the instructions of God. In each case, we're going to be transported from where we are to the promised land across stormy seas in a design built by God, not by man. Now, you ought to start putting this together in your head, because we know this was all written for us. What kind of things do we live in now that were designed by God, not by man? First of all, our bodies.
Temple ordinances.
The what?
Temple ordinances.
The temple ordinances, sure. The priesthood.
Sacrament.
The sacrament. These are all vehicles. The families. In fact, I love that if you listen, the family proclamation says, in talking about the relationship and the need for husbands and wives, it's the paragraph says, by divine design. By divine design. Families as presently constructed are by divine design. Then he's going to say, within this divine design, designed by God, husbands, men, are going to have three responsibilities, all starting with P. They are to preside, provide, protect, and women are to be nurturing. And then he says, and again, by divine design, this preside, provide, and protect, and this nurturing role are equal parts. That nurturing is as critical and as equal to presiding and providing. And that is the divine design. Okay? So we are in family organizations designed by God. So this is part of our vehicle. Okay? Now.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Why did they build barges when the other ones built ships?
It's a good question. I don't know.
Because barges are different than ships.
Yeah, you would think that a barge would be just, although we don't know. They could have used the word ship, and it could have been that Nephi. See, we know how Nephi's boat looked, right? Sure we do. You've seen the pictures. Of course we know how they look.
It could have been because they had the Leahona with them, and the Jaredites are driven by winds.
Right.
But the Nephi saying they had to go all in one ship because they had to be steered according to the Aaronic.
Sure.
They couldn't have gone in a bunch of little ships with no steering.
Possible, although hang on to that idea for just a second. But we do know how Nephi's ship looked because of Arnold Freeberg. That's why it is that we know that all the men had arms as big as their legs. You know? And to get past that image, those Freeberg images, we think we know how those boats look and stuff like that. We may be completely wrong, and they could have looked like barges. It could have been one big barge.
I wonder how they launched it.
Well, yeah. The engineer in you would love that, wouldn't it? How would they do that?
I thought of that the other day.
Okay, so one of the, we know that they traveled, as we do, in a vehicle designed by God. Okay? Think about the church and how it is, and the gospel and how the whole thing is designed. Okay? So this is us. Now, here's the second part. Divine tutoring. How are you going to do this? I, Nephi, did go unto the mount oft, and I did pray oft unto the Lord. Now, what about with the Jaredites? Well, the Lord came again unto the brother of Jared, and for 3 hours did the Lord talk with him. How many meetings do we have in the church? How many conferences and councils and trainings and stuff? You know, I was in constant meetings yesterday from 6:30 in the morning till 12:30 in the afternoon, one after another. And it was meetings and meetings and councils and conferences and PPIs and all kinds of stuff. All directed by prayer and guidance. And we were all being tutored constantly. Sometimes by a stake president, sometimes by a bishop, sometimes by a quorum leader, a Relief Society president. We get this constant tutoring on our journey. Then we come home and we're supposed to have families and family home evening and all that kind of stuff. And what do we do about individually? We get all this constant tutoring. Okay? In this barge, in this boat designed by God. Now, how are we going to see where we're going? Does the Lord intend for us to make this journey in darkness? If it's really simple, shouldn't that just work? Just trust me. Stay in the dark and you'll get to the other side. That sounds like look at the brazen serpent. You don't have to do much. But he says, I do not intend that you should make this journey in the dark. Say that differently. Apply that to us now. How does he intend us to make this journey? With his help and faith, and he wants you to see where we're going. He does not intend for us to make this journey in the dark. He's going to give us light so that we can see, so that we can have visions. How much of the scriptures that we read have to do with the future? Here's what's coming. Here's what to plan for. Here's the signs of the times. Here's when this will happen. Isn't he giving us light constantly about what's coming? He intends us not to be in the dark. I'm always fascinated by those that attack the church and they're like, well, Mormons are sheeple. You're just supposed to obey, yes. And you're supposed to obey blindly, suggesting that you're going to obey in the dark. And the Lord says, I intend that you will make this journey in the light. I want you to see with a vision where we're going. You going to know all of it? No. But I need you to see for the most part where we're going.
Without a leash.
Yeah. Or there's going to be a leash? No. This isn't a rod of iron, is it? This is a Leahona life. We're going here, and I'm going to have you see where you're going. So he's going to say, I will also be your light in the wilderness, and I will prepare the way for you. I will be your light. Let me show you where you are going. And in fact, in your individual life, how are you going to know? What light do you get in your own individual life to tell you where you're going?
The Holy Ghost.
Besides the Holy Ghost. Very specific. What do you get? What instrument has been given to you to for a specific light to you in your life, tailored to you individually? Or your patriarchal blessing. That is your light. And it's different from everybody else's. Here is your journey. Here's what's going to happen. Here's what you need to do. Here's what to be careful of. Here's what I've promised you. Here are the blessings coming to you. You have an individual light for your tailored individually to you.
A friend of mine, Raymond Clapp, he always says our patriarchal blessing is like the cliff notes of our last interview with Heavenly Father. And when we get our patriarchal
blessing, our cliff notes of our last interview.
The most important things he wants us to remember.
Isn't that awesome?
Bring to our mind while we're in this.
I like that a lot.
But I think it's not just that blessing, it's all blessings that we receive, because I have received amazing revelation and blessing since that 40 years ago when I received that other, my patriarchal blessing, which I've kind of accomplished all the things it said in there, because a lot of it had to do with raising my children. But I have had blessings since then that have been very instrumental, very important, and very much needed.
So we are actually entitled, in fact, anybody been given a new calling lately and got set apart? Did you get a light? Did you get something specific to you to give you added blessing and counsel, but also to give you some sense about where you're going? He does not intend you to make this journey in darkness. And he says, is it going to be your light? No. I will be your light. Let me be your light to guide you on this journey.
This isn't exactly spiritual, though, but in the life of talking about
Yes.
blessings. I was told yesterday that you can now put the patriarchal blessing up on LDS.org.
I don't think I knew
Has
that.
anybody done that?
That you can pull up your patriarchal blessing on LDS.org?
And I don't know now, but I was just told by somebody yesterday that they
Wow. So not only can you get these scriptures, you can get your scriptures.
Yeah.
We had our state conference yesterday, and Elder Snow was there, who's with the historical group, and he mentioned that there's a lot of this church history stuff that's available now on the internet through LDS.org, including your patriarchal blessing.
That's very cool. I didn't know that.
Go back to the comment you made about how we're being called sheeple. And I am just sitting here really bothered that the very thing we're supposed to be is Jesus Christ's sheep. He
Yes.
asks us again and again and again to be his sheep.
Yeah, let me
And
be in your
they've
fold.
turned it into a mocking thing, and it's making us feel like we don't want to be a sheep.
I know. And I remember at BYU a few years ago, I stood up and I talked about the idea of sheeple. And then I said, I need you to know I'm a very happy sheeple. I'm happy to be a sheeple. I'm supposed to be a lamb in his. I want to be in his fold, and I want to have him as my shepherd. I'm a very happy sheeple. And I had a lady come up after, and she goes, "No, sheeple is bad. It means that you're just kind of blindly following." And I said, "That's the language they're trying to put on it, but I'm a happy sheeple."
It depends on who your shepherd is. You're only
Well, that's true. Yeah. Outside of the church, beware of sheeple, because they're going to do bad. Whoever you're going to look for your shepherd is going to be fallible, and that's not going to work. I know who my shepherd is, so I'm a happy sheeple. But anyway, okay. So he says, "I will be your light in the wilderness," and in fact, to the Jaredites, do they get a light to see?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. What will ye that I should do that you may have light in your vessel? And then he's going to give each one of them, and then each boat, each barge, is going to have one of these seer stones. Okay? Now, finally, and here's the part that I think is just kind of amazing. So here's the other thing. If you're sitting now in the boat, you've got a boat designed by God. You can now see where you're going. You've talked to him. You now climb into the boat. Are you going anywhere? What do you finally need to make your journey?
Water.
Okay, you're on the water. Oh, the literal among us. What are you going to need? Wind. Wind. How are you going to get there? You know, ancient sailors knew if the sea is becalmed, we're toast. We're just going to sit there because we don't have an outboard motor. You got to have wind. That's why they follow the trade winds. That's why they're called trade winds. We can't trade with one another unless we have wind. Got to have wind.
But how many of us want to sit in that becalmed in our life?
We just want to stay right here. I want to stay on the land bountiful, not go anywhere. Okay? All right. But you're not going to go anywhere without the wind. Okay, so here comes the last piece. You got to be driven by wind. Now, we did put forth into the sea and were driven forth before the wind towards the promised land. We also know that the Lord God caused that there should be a furious wind for the Jaredites to blow upon the face of the waters. In the case of the Jaredites, we know that they were kind of at a storm at sea with the wind blowing them for how long? 344 days. That's a heck of a storm. That's a lot of wind. You know? If any of you been on a ship or a cruise ship or something with a little bit of wind and kind of a storm, and it's like, we had a storm one night, and they put barf bags on all of on the stairwells. Yeah, every stairwell has like a little barf bag just in case. We don't do well in storms at sea. This is 344 days. They had a long way to go. They were coming like almost circumnavigating. That's just a long ways. Now, the idea of this wind, the wind is kind of important. If you just see it as a wind, you're going to miss this. So let me. Let's see. Okay. Let's go to the Kirtland Temple dedication. And then I'll explain to you what it is that you're looking at. In the Kirtland Temple dedication, Joseph is going to use an interesting phrase to describe what he wants to happen for all those who are entering the temple. Okay? He's going to say, "Let it be fulfilled upon them, those that will enter into the temple, as upon those on the days of Pentecost. Let the gift of tongues be poured out among the people, even cloven tongues as of fire," and the interpretation. And as part of that, he says, "And let thy house be filled with" what? "A rushing, mighty wind." Those that would enter the temple, or that the temple is to be dedicated, are to be in a place that has been filled with a rushing, mighty wind. What's that?
Is that supposed to be Revelation?
Can be. Are we to be, but we are specifically, when we go to the temple, we're a place that is sanctified by a rushing wind. Now, in the Hebrew tongue, that's called ruach. That is a wind, that there is the breath of life, that there's a wind that is involved in lifting us. Okay? And it's tied in a bit to this gift of tongues, cloven tongues of fire. And then he's going to say, "And also let this church to put upon it thy name." This place that is filled with the wind is going to be filled with thy name, and help us with the power by thy Spirit, that we may mingle our voices with those bright, shining seraphs around thy throne with acclamations of praise. That's a seraph, a 5th century representation of a seraph from Hagia Sophia from Istanbul. Where they tried to get a sense of these seraphs surrounded by flaming fire that would lift people. And so let me ask you, that if there is a sense that we are in a vehicle that is designed by God, filled with light, now we're supposed to be pushed forward with the wind. What is the wind pushing us forward? Is what?
The Lord's belt.
Okay, what will that look like? How do you know you're being pushed forward with the wind? You can feel it. What do you feel? Yeah? You ever felt pushed by the angels, by this wind to impel you to do something? Like you're being shoved. You ever been sitting in a fast and testimony meeting and suddenly found yourself standing up? Mm-hmm. Like, how did I get here? Or people get up and start to bear their testimony. I'm not sure why I'm here, but the Spirit said, go. What would happen to those that are going to push back against the wind? Okay? The Lord is saying, let me build the boat, let me fill you with light, and let me be the energy that pushes you forward and moves you where? Where are we going? Towards Him. Do we see where it is? No. But we know the general direction. He's leading us forward.
You know, I just want to go back because what you're saying is so powerful in our lives every day. And I love this before Jaredites go, you know, and on the barges, I was going to say boats, but
right.
you know, this is so important, like where it says, it's either 2:24, for behold, we have been as a whale in the midst of the sea, for the mountain waves shall be dashing upon you. How many times do we feel dashed in this life?
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Nevertheless, I will bring you out again of the depths of sea, or the winds that have gone forth out of my mouth, and also the rains and such, etc. And then on 25 it goes on to say, because I have prepared you for this. And even President Monson a couple of conferences ago quoted that, 25. And I think we have to remember that Joseph or us, that we have to remember that Heavenly Father prepared these experiences for us. He's not leaving us alone.
No.
And when we feel like we're dashed into 100 pieces, or we feel like we're drowning under whatever is going on, we need to remember, because it says, I will bring you up again. But that means we have to follow His way.
And that is the simplicity that says, I designed this, I know where you're going, I'm providing you with the light, but I am going to push you.
Right.
You're going to be driven to where I need you to be. Don't push back against this. Yeah.
Can you just go back a slide for a moment?
Yeah.
As you talk.
Okay. All right.
I believe under President Kimball, there was a revelation about all worthy men being able to
Yeah. 78.
Brother McConkey, I think, said he likened it into the day of Pentecost, as that's how he described that.
You're right, he did. You're right. Elder McConkey talked about that moment when the Spirit was given to the 12, when President Kimball said, we're ready to move forward in this, in their Thursday meeting. And the 12 were all there. And he said they had kind of, I guess there had been a lot of discussions about, is this the time? And are we ready to do this? And you're right. They said it was like Pentecost, that they were all lifted and they just suddenly felt how powerful and right that decision was in June of 78. You're right. And he talked about and then he walked out of that and he said, everything that's ever been said on this topic is wrong. Because this is what the Lord has declared, and we know that now is the moment, and it was by His Spirit that this is done. Yeah, great point. All right. Last. Okay. Let me finish with this. Let's go to 1 Nephi 19:6. So, to kind of put a button on what we've been talking about. They're going to get into the promised land, and again, Nephi isn't including a lot of the details about what it took and everything. He just wanted to record, especially on these small plates of Nephi, the things that would be of most worth to us. And here's what he needs us to know about this record. Nevertheless, he says, I do not write anything upon the plates, save it be what I think be sacred. Now, if I err, even did they err of old. Not that I would excuse myself because of other men, but because of the weakness that is in me. Let me just suggest that sometimes I think we may hold off in our writings, our journalings, or something to who may read it, and we're a little shy about maybe writing the stuff that includes our weaknesses. But our kids need to know our weaknesses. People around us need to know where we've struggled. There's a lot of things they don't need to know. I mean, certainly privacy says there are a lot of things people don't need to know. But I've found that when we are a little bit more open with our own weaknesses, people appreciate that because they're doing their own struggle. And I love the fact that Nephi says that we have this moment with Nephi and Laban. And here's the struggle he's having with this. And this is where he almost faltered. And Moroni is going to do the same thing in Ether 12. We have our weaknesses. Well, how about we be open? If we may be weak, but we are in an organization created by God. We are given light because of our weaknesses. We are given a mighty wind to push us to where we need to be because we won't do it on our own. We'll mess it up. And He knows that. And He loves us. And He's going to be there for us. But this is why, ultimately, and I'll finish with the words of Paul, where in fact, let me just finish with this. I'm going to go to, that would be a better way to finish this. 2 Corinthians 12. I've shared this in other places. Paul has just had the section 76, the 3 degrees of glory. And he says, I knew a man, me, that was caught up to paradise, heard unspeakable things. Then he says, and lest I should be exalted above measure through the abundance of revelation, there was given unto me a thorn in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to buffet me lest I should be exalted above measure. We don't know what his thorn in the flesh was, but he was given something that he really struggled with. Okay? Lest I be exalted above measure, unless I kind of think I'm all that. I start propping myself up, I think I'm that great. For this thing, he says, I besought the Lord thrice that it might depart from me. He says, 3 times I asked the Lord to remove this weakness from me. And the Lord says, no. Not all of our weaknesses become strengths. Not all of our weaknesses become strengths. He said it thrice. Not all of our weaknesses become strengths. For this thing I besought the Lord thrice that it might depart from me. He said, my grace, my son, is sufficient for thee. I designed the boat. For my strength is made perfect in weakness. Specifically, my strength is made perfect in your weakness. Most gladly, therefore, Paul says, will I glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ, His wind, may rest upon me. Therefore, I take pleasure in my infirmities, in reproaches, in necessities, in persecutions, in distresses for Christ's sake, because often I won't do it very well. I'll screw up from time to time. I won't teach great lessons. I will, have horrible family home evenings. For when I am weak, then am I strong. When I am in His boat, doing it His way, using His light, not my light. There's my challenge to you for Thanksgiving. I believe as we roll into a time of thankfulness, that we can be thankful for our weaknesses. I think we should be thankful for our humanness. Because the beauty of our humanness and our weaknesses is that we exist in vessels that God designed. whether it's our family or quorums or classes or churches or whatever. He designed them for our weaknesses. And He's going to give us the wind to get us where we need to go. And if we will glory in that, then we really glory in His atonement and His mercy unto those of us who are sinners and weak. I pray that we can do that this week. And I leave that with you in Jesus' name. Amen.